Hi, thank you for joining me in this short broadcast, this presentation I'm going to give you this morning. And if you have little children at home and are already concerned about how well they will do in college or whether they will make it through high school properly, I have something I want to share with you that helped me raise my kids when my kids were little. Right now, my kids are in their early 30s and upper 20s. I have three children. My son, well, I'll tell you about that later, but let me give you a way you can help your children do the best they can do in school. That'd be grade school, high school, college, and you can start right now, even if they're 2, 3, and 4 years of age. The thing I want to emphasize in this short broadcast is the reasons why you should read to your children. We don't live in a reading generation, and so many children are hooked on electronic gear, but children ought to get back to the norm of just reading. Let me give you some reasons why you should read to your children. And when our children grew up, I read probably dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of books to them and thousands of pages. At one point later on, after I read for years to them, I read about 90% of the Bible out loud to them to help them on their way to read God's Word, and that was valuable to them. But there's a lot of good books out there, whether it be Cat in the Hat or Laura Ingalls Wilder books on Little House on the Prairie, and Secret Garden, and Robin Hood and Ivanhoe for guys. All those kind of great books are so interesting and so much fun. And let me give you now some reasons why you should read to your children and the benefit it's going to give your child. Okay, number one, when you read to your children, it's just plain fun. You want your child to have a good childhood as they look back in the years they grew up and have a memory that they had a good childhood, fun, enjoyable with mom and dad. Well, then read to your children. We laughed and giggled, and my kids squirmed and laughed with delight. Sometimes I would change words in a story, and my son would say, "Dad, did it really happen that way?" We had fun together. We laughed and enjoyed those many hours together, night after night after night, as I read to them. So number one is just plain fun. And I like to have a good time. I like to still read, and I think you like to read. So read to your children and help them to see that it is a fun thing to do. Number two, it's a great time of parent and child bonding. Even when my son was just a little boy, I was reading to him. He was in my lap. We were reading some kind of a book. I don't remember what it was. And I said, "Wesley," I said, later, we better enjoy this now, because when you're 16, you won't want to climb in my lap to read a book. And he said, "Dad," he said, "when I'm 16, I'm going to come crawl in your lap." And sure enough, on his 16th birthday, he came over, crawled in my lap, and we laughed and joked about all that for like a long time. Even my girls, even today, they're avid readers, and we share books back and forth, we talk. And you know what? I attribute many of those hours of early reading to the bond I have to my children now as adults. So it's a time of great parent and child bonding. Number three is just educational. You want to have your children have a jump on their education, and when they go to kindergarten and first and second grade, already have a 2 or 3 year head start on the other children. Read to your children then. Read to them. It's educational. They see pictures, they see colors, they see things they never saw before. You can explain things and talk about maybe even some issues of life perhaps. You can point out things in big cities or in farms or in foreign countries. It's educational. And then number four, when you read to your children, your child hears the sound of your voice in a pleasant way. Long gone is the screaming and yelling that many families have to put up with and children have to put up with. But now they hear mom reading in her pleasant voice. They hear dad bellowing out big words and laughing and joking in a pleasant way. And you know what? That's good for kids. They will remember you as a very pleasant individual when you sit down to read to them. In fact, one time I was reading to my children, and my son was on the carpet coloring while I was reading, and I said, "Wesley," I said, "did you hear what I was reading?" And he said, "Dad, everything you read I can see in my head." That's what he said as a little kid. I think it was even preschool. Everything I was reading, he could see in his mind. But he heard my voice, the voice of my wife, etc., and they hear the sound of a pleasant voice. And number 5, your child's attention span is lengthened. The commercials on TV today are what, 20 or 30 seconds? Because that's the average attention span. How would you like to develop an attention span in your child that goes 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Well, you can do that when you read to them, because they have to continue in their head reading or listening to the story. And you know what? That is good to develop a longer attention span. Even sermons in churches are 20-minute devotionals because the people have low attention spans. Well, let's increase that, and let's start with our children by reading to them. And when the child is in school and the teacher is discussing some concept, your child will be much more able to catch on to that concept maybe than the child next to them. Why? Because you took time to read to your child. There's 5 reasons you should read to your children. Share this video with someone else, and I'm going to do a second video with 5 more reasons. And again, don't forget the best book of all to read, and that is God's Word. Thank you so much for joining me, and God bless you, your family, and your children.